Jessi Pierce, I appreciate her spending the time with us on what should be a downtime, and it probably is for you, Jessi. So thank you for coming in from NHL.com, Bar Down Beauties podcast. Before we get to the Wild and just an update in the offseason, you know how many Vikings fans watch this show out here in the Canadian prairies? How much, well, obviously you're following the Vikings. What's your report on training camp here, like a week into it?
It's been fun. We're getting to see those glimpses of J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback selected in the first round by the Minnesota Vikings, the future quarterback of the Vikings. Right now, he is listed on the depth chart as number 2 behind Sam Darnold. But it's just nice. Football season is here, RP. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. People don't really get. So Sam Darnold started with the ones. He was taking first-team reps, and then they put in J.J. McCarthy late last week. I saw that, and people are like, oh, he's taking over number 1. Well, maybe they want to see what McCarthy looks like with the ones. But obviously, the eyes are just on that position, and for good reason. What is the outlook, by the way? What's yours? What kind of season do you think this team going to have?
I think they'll be good. I mean, Justin Jefferson back from injury, right? The hope is that everything goes well there. And it depends on how Sam Darnold does in those opening weeks. You need a quarterback, guys. We just need a good quarterback. I loved what Flores did with the defense last year, so I think that's in a strong spot. But really, it's going to be that quarterback position, much like it was last year. I mean, the Vikings salvaged a season, obviously missing the playoffs, but still looked okay with no quarterback per se. So at least this year, they have a good game plan heading in, and I like what Kevin O'Connell's done with the squad thus far. So we're raring to go. Back in the playoffs, baby. That's the Skol way, if you will.
Ooh, I think so. I'm positive too. But when you say no quarterback, you're talking about Kirk Cousins going down with injury, I assume. Like what words, and you're a wordsmith, would you use to characterize the Kirk Cousins era in Mini?
Volatile, I think. Kirk Cousins here was either a love or hate situations. You were in one camp or the other. There really was no in between. And actually, statistically, Kirk Cousins performed very well. But Kirk Cousins also has never made it to the promised land. He's never led a team, the Vikings included, into a deep playoff run. So really, he hasn't achieved a heck of a whole lot. Good on him and his agent, though, for getting paid and going and finding that money, even despite the record and the lack of accolades maybe he has. But it was okay. I mean, Kirk did what he could do. He got the ball to JJ, which is, again, the most important thing to do here in Minnesota as of right now. I wasn't a big Kirk Cousins fan, so I'm okay with moving on to get different pastures, but he performed well. I mean, you can't say he didn't. Again, statistically, very good career here with the Vikings.
I know you weren't, and that's kind of why I asked. At least his bank account was an A+ in Mini. So we'll switch over to hockey now. And I don't know how you feel about odds and things. I mean, I read them. I don't put a whole lot of stock in them. But NHL Network has the Oilers and Panthers as the favorites to win the Stanley Cup this year. But you're Wild, that team which you cover for NHL.com, they've got as a playoff team and plus 4,000 to win it all, along with the Red Wings and the Senators. Do you pay attention to these types of things? And what is your outlook for the Wild this year?
Yes and no. It's hard to not pay attention to it, right? But things change so quickly throughout the course of a season, as we so well know. I mean, the Oilers have been top for the past couple seasons, and that goes up and down for them, just as any season does. I think Minnesota will get back into the playoffs, although it's also because so many teams do make the playoffs in this format, right? They should get back in the playoffs. You still have a relatively easy division here in the Central. For Minnesota, St. Louis still kind of down and out. Chicago still kind of down and out. I mean, yes, you've got your Colorados, you've got Winnipeg, who's going to be very curious for me. I can't decide how I feel about the moves that they're making, but I certainly enjoy watching the Jets. But yeah, I think Minnesota will make the bounce back. The biggest difference between this year and last year, fingers crossed, knock on wood, any superstitious things that you might have, will be health, right? You were missing Jared Spurgeon for the majority of last year. You had Matt Zuccarello in and out of the lineup. You had Marcus Foligno, a lot of your key players, and even Kirill Kaprizov, rumored to have started the year injured, but playing through that injury, or guys like Freddie Gaudreau, similar situation. So I think, obviously, injuries, every team can use that as an excuse. But for Minnesota, that really was the Achilles heel last year, I think. So as long as they can stay healthy, there's no reason they can't make it back into the playoffs this year.
I will lastly ask you about coaching, because I felt like you had a lot of respect for Dean Evison and liked him a lot. And John Hines is the head coach now. And what do you say? Bill Guerin winced at having to fire Dean Evason. He didn't want to do it, but felt he had to do it. So now it's the first full season under John Hines. How big of a change was that? Or was the coaching change just a minimal bump spike for them last year? And that wasn't really the problem. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't coaching, and that's, my relationship and friendship aside with Dean Evason. I got to cover him the longest of any coaches since my time with NHL.com here. They can't fire any of the players, right? That's exactly what Bill Guerin said. They were performing so poorly, but you can't get rid of the guys on the ice. You got to get rid of the guy on the bench, and I think Dean Evason knew that, Bill Guerin knew that, and even John Hines, as he came in, knew that. John Hines wasn't the quote-unquote sexy hire. He isn't this name. Again, we talked about that with Kirk Cousins. John Hines hasn't necessarily achieved a heck of a whole lot in postseason play himself, and obviously missing the playoffs with the Wild last year, another notch there. I am excited for this season, though, because it is a full season with John Hines. John Hines didn't really get to put his fingerprints on the Minnesota Wild until the latter end of last year, and in doing so, they went on a great stretch. I mean, Minnesota certainly made it interesting toward the end of the regular season, the kind of will they, won't they make the playoffs type of thing, and they continued to fight till the end. So I think the players really responded to John Hines well. I think going into training camp with that coach, that familiarity is going to be huge. There hasn't been a heck of a lot of movement, if any, really, on the Minnesota Wild roster. So it's a lot of those same players returning under Hines. I'm just excited to see the line combinations that he makes. That's the biggest difference. Dean Evason became very married to his lines, and John Hines wasn't afraid to shake things up, which I certainly can appreciate. So it'll be a good year. Again, I think this will be a big mark for John Hines to see what he can do with the team, given it's the final year of that salary cap buyout as well.
How do you think Dean Evason will do in Columbus?
I think he'll do well. Dean is a guy that he's a very players coach, and I think that's kind of what they need in Columbus right now in particular. I think Johnny Gaudreau is going to really sail underneath him. I'm excited to see that. We get to see him that game one, Minnesota, Columbus, back at it here in St. Paul. So that should be pretty fun. I'm just happy that he gets another opportunity at the NHL stage because, like I said, great guy. And as long as he doesn't beat up on the Wild too bad, should be a good continued relationship.
Yeah, he is a great guy. He is a great guy. Jessi, thanks for this. Enjoy the rest of the summer. I appreciate the time. Can't wait to chat again.
Always. We'll talk to you later.
Jessi Pierce from NHL.com. She covers the Minnesota Wild. And, of course, the Bar Down Beauties podcast.